संचालक आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव अदारा के तहत सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ पंजाब ने एक स्पेशल व्याख्यान जलियांवाला बाग मार्टायरडम टू फ्रीडम का आयोजन किया है। आयोजन का शुभ आरंभ यूनिवर्सिटी की परंपरा के अनुसार यूनिवर्सिटी के कुल गीत से होगा। इसलिए मेरा सभी से अनुरोध है कि सभी अपनी अपनी जगह पर खड़े हो जाएं। यूनिवर्सिटी कुल गीत। सभी को नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल, गुड आफ्टरनून, आदाब एंड प्रणाम। जलियांवाला बाग को चरितार्थ करती कवि की कुछ पंक्तियां मुझे याद आती हैं। आजादी के शंखनाद का मैं अधूरा ख्वाब हूँ, जान लुटाई थी जिस खातर, हाँ मैं वही स्वराज हूँ, हाँ मैं वही स्वराज हूँ। जलियांवाला बाग के इतिहास को जब हम देखने की कोशिश करते हैं तो हमें जलियांवाला बाग के प्रकरण को समझने के लिए पंजाब के इतिहास को थोड़ा सा पीछे जाके समझना होगा। अलेक्जेंडर द ग्रेट, who dreamt of conquering the world, who was challenged by King Porus on the bank of Jhelum, and the dream of conquering the world has been dashed to the ground. Similarly, Punjab has fought against the Mughals' atrocities, religious bigotry, and orthodoxy. In this line, Punjab had blessed with advent of gurus, saint soldiers, and warriors. Starting with this, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who called Babar to Jabar हैं, Babar को जाबर कहना is one of the very important challenge to the suzerainty of Mughal Empire at that point of time. In this line, Guru Arjan Dev, who sat on the hot plate and laid down his life for the religious cause. Similarly, Guru Tegh Bahadur, ninth Guru of Sikh, who had laid down his life for the religious cause and beheaded in Chandni Chowk, Delhi. Similarly, Guru Gobind Singh, who followed the principle of सवा लाख से एक लड़ाऊं तब एक गोविंद सिंह नाम कहाऊं। देश के लिए, धर्म के लिए, मजलूमों की रक्षा के लिए सर्वंश कुर्बान कर देना, ये था एक गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी के में आता है। So such kind of unparalleled examples of sacrifices where people have been dying for the country and religion, really unparalleled example where it had become very important part and parcel of Punjab life. Similarly, these people had become sword of India and laid down their life for the protection of Indian independence. To me, Jallianwala Bagh, I have viewed the Jallianwala Bagh from 4 viewpoints. So history have already taken into account. No, it has been made mystery for me. As far as already 1 century plus has been completed, and till date, no exact number of deaths taken place on account of Jallianwala massacre had not been known to count people. As far as Court of Human History Department 1990 is concerned, it put the deaths range between 200 to 300. As per military code, it is less than 200 deaths. Similarly, official code of the British government putting it at 379 deaths as well as 1,208 casual injuries. As well as civil societies putting it at 800 deaths, and some eyewitness accounts are there where in which it has been reported that more than 1,000 deaths had taken place in the Jallianwala massacre. Third point, which I used to look into Jallianwala Bagh, it had become very important part and parcel of social ethos, and it has been deeply embedded in the psyche of Indian people. So in that way, it has been figuring very prominently in books, in journals, in novels, in prose, in poetry, in movies, in songs. So in that way, Jallianwala Bagh had been become very important part and parcel of Indian life. Fourth point where I used to see Jallianwala Bagh, it had created a very strong influence on Indian national movement. It had fired spirit among the Indian revolutionaries as well as reinvigorated the Indian national movement, and it created young blood revolutionaries, particularly two important revolutionaries like Bhagat Singh and Shahid Udham Singh. Shahid Udham Singh, who has assassinated General O'Dwyer in Caxton Hall, 13 March 1990. So in that way, Jallianwala Bagh has been made very important part and parcel of Indian life. As far as background of Jallianwala Bagh is concerned, as you know, basically 1914, 1990, the First World War had been going on that point of time, whereas the British Indian government has been seeking the Indian support in terms of men and material, and however, Indian had generously supported the British Empire at that point of time, and in return, Indian has been anticipating that the British Indian government will provide independence to India, whereas on the other hand, rather than providing independence, they had come with Royal Act, wherein basically they can imprison anybody, and he can put into jail for 2 years without any a pleader or a lawyer, court, etc., etc. So in that way, Jallianwala Bagh had been happened on 13 April 1919. In this background, now I would request Professor Ramakrishna Vasrikaji, Dean in charge of academics, please welcome the speaker and audiences. Professor Vasrikaji, please.
So, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome Shri Rajesh Ramachandran ji, the editor of Tribune, and all those who are attending this program. So, I won't take too much time. So, let us listen to our speaker on this very important topic of Jallianwala Bagh. So, I would welcome him to deliver his lecture.
No, after formal welcome, I request Honorable Vice Chancellor, please bless the audiences with his motivational words. Honorable Vice Chancellor, please.
Speaker.
So kindly unmute your mic.
सर माइक अनम्यूट कर लीजिएगा.
Yes.
हेलो.
परफेक्ट सर.
श्री राजेश जी, ऑनरेबल एडिटर ट्रिब्यून, Professor Surika Pusaka, and all my from Central University of Punjab, and also all my students and scholars who are privy to this very important talk which Mr. Rajesh ji will be delivering. we all know that Mr. Rajesh Ramchandran has done extensive research on Jallianwala Bagh, and he has brought out a very good literature on that, which is based on facts and figures. A lot of hard work and exercise of mind has undergone to produce the quality of book that actually last week I happened to read it, and we have added it in our library. And after going through with this book, I can safely say that this is equivalent to doctoral degree. Several new dimensions which were hitherto unknown to us about this massacre. In fact, one of the largest massacre that has happened during the civilizational history of mankind. It happened in broad daylight, and several people were murdered in broad daylight without any mercy, and the cruelty of extreme order that was inflicted on the humankind, on the mankind. About several new dimensions of this massacre, and in-depth analysis of this was done by Mr. Rajesh ji, and I was really very influenced when I went through this literature, and I decided that we should invite Mr. Rajesh ji to talk about it, and particularly for research scholars and students of social science, discipline, humanities, and also languages, and of course for science also, research scholars discipline. And I'm very thankful to him that he has kindly agreed to deliver talk, spare his valuable time. I know that today itself he has come back from Delhi. He has traveled a long way, and in spite of that, he has agreed to deliver talk and educate the fraternity of teaching, research scholars, non-teaching fraternity, and students of University of Punjab on this very important event. And that has really, changed the, the freedom struggle, direction of freedom struggle. It has given new dimensions to the freedom struggle, and it has acted as an impetus and for speeding up the struggle for liberation of India from foreign power. So, without wasting much time, I ask the organizer to give brief introduction of Mr. Rajesh Ramchandran, and then invite him to deliver talk on this occasion. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Dr. Jinder Singh, please introduce the speaker.
Thank you, sir. Very good afternoon to you all. I feel privileged to introduce today's speaker, Shri Rajesh Ramachandran ji. He has been serving as editor the Tribune since 2018. He has worked in editor-in-chief of Outlook magazine, New Delhi from 2016 to 2018. Since 1995, he had worked with some of India's largest publications and a TV channel in New Delhi covering war, insurgency, conflict, politics, parliament, political economy, and government affairs. He had mentored small and big teams, bringing out various editions of 2 national newspapers. Notable reporting assignments include the 1999 Kargil War, exclusive TV reports from the war zone in LTTE held Kilinochchi and Jaffna in Sri Lanka in November 2006, Nepal's Movement for Democracy 2005, TV reports and interviews with the Maoist leadership from the Bastar forest in Chhattisgarh and West Bengal 2006-7 Kashmir insurgency. While doing mainstream political coverage, commentary and analysis, he has exposed several scandals, often leading to parliament debates. For instance, the coffin scam 2001, the Times of India, led to parliament adjournments. The Balco valuation scandal sparked off parliament debates on the valuation of public sector units 2001, the Times of India, and the story on the Rs 10,000 crore petroleum adulteration scandal 2005 Outlook was vindicated by the parliamentary panel. He has edited Martyrdom to Freedom 2019, an anthology of essays and archival material on the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Now I invite Sri Rajesh Ramachandran sir for his address. Sir.
Shri Rajesh Ramachandran ji, please share your ideas with our audience.
जोड़ के देखो ना सर, है भी क्या?
He's here.
हाँ करते हैं।
कहाँ पे है मेरे को दिख Ruben, you are up. Message करके sir, are you available? If you are available, please continue your talk, please. फोन करके with the learned speaker of today's talk. Just bear us with for 2-3 minutes. We are trying to contact him.
हेलो जी सर
This, I guess the problem is with the microphone of your device. So can you please try to log in from some other device? Even if you can try to log in from the mobile phone. But even if you try to log in from your mobile phone, you will be able to deliver it. So that's not a problem. That if you click on a device, you are there. You can see your picture. You can see your login. But the point is, either you disconnect once and then try to rejoin.
उनका वॉल्यूम कम तो नहीं कर रखा उन्होंने, उनका वॉल्यूम बहुत लो हो मिनिमम पे।
दोबारा से रीनेट कर रहे हैं, दोबारा से रिज्यूम कर रहे हैं। दोबारा रिज्यूम करके चलेगा।
सेटिंग में कुछ प्रॉब्लम है।
Can you hear? Can you hear? Can you hear?
Audible now, sir.
Okay.
हो गया।
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
you are audible sir, please go ahead sir.
Can you hear me? I can't.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Now you can play.
Can you hear me?
You are
yes sir,
audible,
continue sir. Continue sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Hello.
hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
टाइप कीजिएगा, continue.
Till now, I could hear you all very well. Now I can't hear anything.
We can hear.
Sir, please put your microphone in the speaker.
So,
Sound will come from
okay. I mean, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. So I don't know what it was. Well, finally, We can start now. Thank you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Raghavendra Tiwari, the faculty of the Central University of Punjab, and I'm very happy to have this interaction with the students as well. So today, Baisakhi reminds me a lot about the oneness of this country. I'm from a place which is very far away, but according to the solar calendar, traditionally, Baisakhi in Punjab is also celebrated another way in, say, Bengal or in Odisha or in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala. So while we celebrate Baisakhi as the New Year according to the solar calendar, Baisakhi is also a very sad reminder, yet again, of the oneness of the nation. That is the memory. That's the memory of those 1,000 people who had lost their lives on 13th of April 1919. So while working on the centenary of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and while attempting to commemorate the centenary of the massacre, one had found a very unique aspect of the relationship of a newspaper with its region, a newspaper with its readership, newspaper with the people. There was a newspaper which used to be brought out from London called Morning Post. This Morning Post was a very important newspaper in the sense that Wordsworth, the great poet Wordsworth, used to write for it. Coleridge used to write for it. But at the same time, Morning Post was a very right-wing, rabid right-wing, imperialist, pro-colonial newspaper. So Morning Post had claimed that, or rather attributed, the entire Jallianwala Bagh massacre onto one person and one newspaper. That was the entire Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and all that had happened was attributed to the editor of the Tribune, the then editor of the Tribune, the great editor of the Tribune, Kalinath Ray. Kalinath Ray had written a series of articles ever since there was this great disappointment after the Rowlatt bills were being brought in February, March of 1919. Kalinath Ray kept on writing editorials saying that this is the beginning of the end of the British rule in India. This is where we are going to part our ways. And now to think about it, it is so very difficult for a journalist or an editor who is immersed in the here and now to take a longer view, to take a larger view, and to think that this is the beginning of the end of the British Empire, or to say that, this is where we part our ways. So he had kept on writing how difficult this is going to be for the people of India. It does not pertain to just one province. Of course, of the 12 or 13 lakh people who had participated, Indians who had participated in the First World War, roughly about 60% were from Punjab. And a large number of people from Punjab had laid down their lives. So there was an expectation that the British government would give something in return. And that was not to be. And then came the Rowlatt bills, which one of them became the Rowlatt Act. And after that, Gandhi's declaration to have a national protest day, which was the 6th of April. 6th of April was the national protest day. And very interestingly, again, I have to quote this great editor who was trying to explain what the national protest day was to his readers, that you have to keep fast. You have to do a day's fast. And how does he explain that? He's explaining that a day's fast, when somebody dies in our family, we keep a fast. So here, it is something similar that has happened. something similar has happened for the nation. So on the 6th of April, this was the beginning of the Gandhian movement, beginning of the national struggle in terms of peaceful national struggle in terms of fasting and self-sacrifice and inflicting pain on oneself. So the whole thing is being explained so beautifully. As and 6th of April happens, and after that, Gandhi decides to visit. Then the Punjab disturbance. Gandhi decides to visit Punjab. So 8th or 9th of Punjab, he was arrested, and he was sent back to the Bombay presidency. Punjab erupts. Various incidents happen all across Punjab, particularly in Amritsar. Several people are killed, a few Europeans are killed, and then Dyer decides. O'Dwyer and Dyer. O'Dwyer, the governor, and Reginald Dyer, his favorite military man, both decide to teach the people of Amritsar a lesson. And therein, floggings happen. People are being made to crawl through the street. Even water is being denied. And then on the 13th, now here again, I have to come back to the role that was played by this great newspaper all through. From the beginning of the agitation, from March 21st, when one of the first editorials were being written against the Rowlatt Act, to 1975, it was V.N. Datta in an article in 1975 in the conspiracy of the Jallianwala Bagh. Till then, we had all believed, till then everybody believed that there was a congregation, there was the Baisakhi congregation, people had gone to the Golden Temple, they had paid their obeisance at the Golden Temple, and after having their prayers, some of them had congregated at Jallianwala Bagh, others were also sitting there, and then suddenly Dyer comes in and opens fire because Dyer had earlier promulgated an order saying that there should not be any gathering. But no, V.N. Datta and the Tribune had exposed in 1975 that there was a conspiracy. There was a conspiracy by a person, a British agent called Hansraj. This Hansraj was sent out to bring people in, saying that there is going to be a political meeting. There was not going to be any political meeting. There was no political meeting planned. He goes around and says that, particularly people who, because by then, Dr. Saifuddin Kislu, by then all the leaders were arrested. There were no leaders there. So it was easy for this person to have lured people all around who were staying all around, who were living all around, to bring them here. And then he gets them trapped and then walks in till Jal Dyer, who opened fire, and about 1,000 odd people died. So now, from that point till 1975, I would always cherish the idea of a newspaper steadfastly, not just reporting, but inquiring, investigating, and finally, with this great modern India historian V.N. Datta's conclusion that there indeed was a conspiracy, there indeed the British had acted foul. So this is the long saga of the Tribune's role in investigating, Tribune's role in inquiring, reporting, and I mean, because of paucity of time, I have to skip a lot of things. But very, very interestingly, there is a reportage of the Hunter Committee proceedings, wherein Dyer comes in. Dyer, we have heard about Dyer, but those days to report Dyer's deposition. Dyer's deposition in court was reported in beautiful prose. The general's fame had drawn in a very large crowd as it had got abroad that he was to appear before the committee today. The hall was packed to its utmost capacity before 10, and many had to go away for want of room, even the side entrances to the hall being occupied. A pretty large number of European ladies had assembled to hear the hero of Jallianwala Bagh. The Europeans was definitely a hero, and they seemed to follow his evidence with keen interest. As soon as the members took their seats, General Dyer stepped into the witness's chair. Every eye was at once turned on him, somewhere between 50 and 55, of medium height, with a very red face, a short, snub nose, small eyes, dressed in military uniform, booted and spurred. The general looked like any ordinary British officer. In giving evidence, General Dyer affected a frankness provoking in its cynicism and repulsive in its brutality. Repulsive in its brutality. Please understand, this was a paper reporting with so much frankness, that too after its editor was sent to jail, who was sentenced for 2 years of rigorous imprisonment. Kalinath Ray was arrested on 17th April. 17th April, that is 13th April, the incident happens. The paper was being brought out from Lahore. 17th April, he was arrested. 28th May, he was convicted for 2 years rigorous imprisonment. And then the case goes up. And suddenly, the government of India decides to suspend the sentence. They don't acquit him. They suspend the sentence. Still, the case went up to the Privy Council. So, August, he was released. So, roughly about 4 months he had spent. In these 4 months, he was in hospital thrice. He was so weak and he was ill-treated, probably tortured. And thrice he had to go to hospital. And he comes back. And he comes back, he has no rancor. He has no hatred for the British. But at the same time, absolutely bold, brave, candid, and he is referring to Dyer in the same newspaper within months while reporting Hunter Committee meeting as repulsive in his brutality. So this the saga of the reportage, the saga of reporting and inquiring and investigating the Jallianwala Bagh massacre is also the story of one man's bravery, one man's courage, and you would also want to know, what sort of a man this person was. A very, very shy person. I'll read out a very short account of Kalinath Ray, the editor, who brought out all these details so that the world could get to know. Even the great poet Rabindranath Tagore, he had renounced, he had gave his knighthood back when he got to know about the massacre. So recently we had tried to understand who could have, because Tagore sitting far away in Calcutta, or in his a village somewhere closer to Dhaka, or somewhere in between, and the happenings of Amritsar, no newspapers were being published, no means of information. So we found that it was again his friendship with Kalinath Ray, probably the reason why he got to know what was happening, and his renunciation. When he gave his knighthood back, it became a huge event all across the British Empire. So this is the man who actually got the world to know about what had happened. Ray was a short man wearing a woolen cap. His coat of Kashmir tweed had shed the greater part of its wool many years ago. It carried many a telltale mark of indiscretions resulting from absent-minded handling of fish curry, milk tumbler, rasagullas, and dal bhat. His eyes were completely hidden behind thick lenses encased in an iron frame, which was being held in position by a cotton thread in at least 3 places. He was a man of few words. Obviously, few words when he spoke, but when he wrote copiously. He wrote so much that there were lots and lots of people, not just in Lahore or in Delhi, but even in London, who believed that this was the man and this was the newspaper which had whipped up the storm, that had led to this incident. Not just that, and subsequently also, the man and the paper which had whipped up this great frenzy all across the British Empire. So much so that when he was arrested, Gandhi took up his case. He wrote in his own newspaper, he asked people from Lahore to Erode down in Tamil Nadu that everywhere, wherever there was a local newspaper, wherever there were local lawyers who were organized, that you should all collect yourself. You should hold protest marches. You should write memorandums and submit it to the local authorities asking for Kalinath Ray's release. And again, coming back, this was Gandhi's foray into Punjab. Jallianwala Bagh became the memory, the event and the memory became a metaphor. This became the greatest metaphor because if we look back from 1847, there was not a single memorial for any martyr for the cause of India's freedom. This was addressed by Gandhi by acquiring. First, he acquired, by collecting money, he acquired the land at Jallianwala Bagh. He acquired the Jallianwala Bagh, and then he collected money to build a memorial there. And this memorial, lots of people had died. Lots of people, thousands or probably tens of thousands of people might have died during the First War of Independence, that is 1857. But there was no memorial for any of those martyrs of 1857. Subsequently also, there were lots of skirmishes all across the country, all across the British Empire. But the first memorial for the martyrs for the cause of the Indian nation was erected by the Memorial Committee, probably one of those rare committees where Gandhi was also a member. So this committee bought the land, erected the memorial, thereby forever memorializing, thereby forever institutionalizing and nationalizing the memory of the event, making it a national metaphor. And there again, you see, and when I looked at the archives, there again I see the role of the most favorite newspaper of Punjab. There again I see the role of the Tribune, because the Tribune is repeatedly asking people to contribute money. The Tribune is putting out new stories every now and then about the Memorial Committee, about the building of a memorial, about acquiring of the land, about the need to do it. So in a sense, this was a long saga of what should I say, the long story of memorializing one event which triggered or inspired an entire nation to suffer greater sacrifices. Because if the people of Amritsar had suffered, if 1,000 or more people had laid down their lives, this became a reminder to the rest of the nation that this is the price you need to pay, and this is the price you are going to pay in your struggle. And incidentally, the only book that had come out on Jallianwala Bagh was brought out by the British, because the British understood the importance of the memory of this event. So the British did not waste any time in getting the Civil and Military Gazette of Lahore. Civil and Military Gazette of Lahore, you all know, was the pro-British newspaper which was being brought out by Lahore and a competitor of the Tribune. These were the two big newspapers, a pro-British Civil and Military Gazette and a nationalist newspaper, that is the Tribune. So Civil and Military Gazette brought out the first book, more of a pamphlet. In 1919 itself, within months, it was called Punjab Disturbances, April 1990, compiled from the various news reports of the Civil and Military Gazette. And unfortunately, for the Tribune, it took us 100 years. We brought out the book, we brought out the nationalist version, along with various essays from various eminent, not just archival material, but contemporary reading of what had happened. That happened only in 2019. So, one of the most interesting aspect of the memory and the reportage of this event all through the months was the sense of detachment, because right now we are in an era where we get to have journalists playing the role of the jury and probably even the executioner. So here is an actual participant, a person who had gone to jail, who had suffered rigorous imprisonment, who had to be hospitalized 3 times during his stay in jail, coming out and being absolutely detached, absolutely neutral, and restrained, sober in every utterance that he makes, or every line that he writes. All through, probably that is the reason why the Tribune was never again penalized. Despite suffering all this, it did not cow down. It did not cow down even for a day. It went on reporting, it went on commentating this in the same spirit, attacking the British where it ought to be attacked. It did not cow down even for a day. But still, there was, in hindsight, we can see that there was a grudging admiration. There was no advertisement. The British had very clearly said that, this one newspaper, we will not give any advertisement. There was no official advertisement given to the British. In fact, the Chief Secretary of the Punjab government had identified the Tribune as more responsible than any other single agency for the anti-British feeling. And it was on this account that we stopped advertisements for the paper. British never gave even a single advertisement to this paper. But after suspending it for a few months, and after putting the editor in jail for 4 months, after that, they did not penalize the newspaper. They did not arrest the editor again, or suspend the publication. Though they had taken about 2,000 rupees, which was a huge amount of money those days. They had taken 2,000 rupees as surety to allow the newspaper to start publishing again. So this is also the story of how as a nation, as a people, we responded to the British brutality by not succumbing, by not surrendering, yet being absolutely polite. So, and this is also the newspaper where, while for instance, Shahid Bhagat Singh was very impatient with Kalinath Ray, because Kalinath Ray's restraint and Kalinath Ray's sobriety was not enough for him. So he was egging on the newspaper and the editor to put more fire in his editorials. But this was the newspaper again to report. In fact, I have it in my room, the newspaper of 25th March 1931. This was the newspaper which reported the hanging of the 3 martyrs, right on its front page. So the story of Jallianwala Bagh, as reported by Tribune, has been what interested me to bring out this new the collected volume. So I'll be most interested. I'll be most happy to take some of your questions.
For firstly, ask any question, if any comments, observations, or any doubt is there, please.
Someone has a question. I just saw a message. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ramachandran, for this wonderful talk and reminding us of the wonderful heritage of journalism in Punjab, especially the contribution of the Tribune in, not only developing some values, but standing by them, which is indeed remarkable. My name is Vikas Rathi. I teach history here. So my question is a bit related and a bit unrelated to what you spoke about. I wanted to ask if, where do you see the ethics of journalism headed in the present scenario? Especially.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, do you feel that print journalism and television journalism have gone on totally separate roads as far as journalistic ethics are concerned? And if so, what do you see to be the future of print in India? I mean, I lived in the US for some time, and the print newspapers are increasingly, especially the local ones, are certainly going out of print, so to speak. Although things like New York Times or LA Times are certainly doing well. So just wondering, so two questions: journalistic ethics, the difference between television and print, and the future of print. Thank you.
I'm extremely happy, Mr. Rathi, that you yourself have understood that there is a divergence. So as long as you understand, as long as discerning, you people are more than discerning readers. You are a historian, and so as long as discerning readers and discerning viewers understand the difference between print and television, our problem is largely solved, because you know and you see that there is a problem in one place and you don't see that problem elsewhere. You think that there is a problem as far as journalistic ethics are concerned in one medium, and you don't see that problem in another medium. So once you understand that there is a divergence, once you understand that in these two media there is a conflict, where there is a conflict as far as values are concerned, there is then that itself shows that we need not now tom what we are and what we are not. You have already understood that, so that explains it. Now only thing that you need to do is to switch off the television. So once you switch off the television, the problem is largely solved. But then there are people who want to see it, and that is why such stuff is being put out. Now, as far as the death of print medium is,
at least in the first world, I don't see such trends in India yet. At least
India. The regional, I don't like to use the term vernacular, because that's a colonial condescending term. So as far as regional language media are concerned, we are still growing.
Okay.
India is one of those rare places where print medium is still growing as far as regional language press is concerned, regional language newspapers are concerned. So there is a lot more scope for having better journalism, having quality journalism in regional language newspapers. Unfortunately, in many places it is lacking because of various reasons. Now, in the first world, why do you have to? First world, they are not using paper. They're not using paper for very many things. So why do you expect them to use paper for news? So when you are not using paper, when your life itself has become paperless, so then you may not be consuming news on a new on a piece of paper. But that doesn't mean that you are not consuming the written word. You are not consuming news as the written word. You are consuming news uh, on a tablet, on your mobile phone. See, even now, you people don't even realize how much news you are consuming on your mobile phone or on your tablet. I mean, much more probably than what you were consuming when you were reading only one newspaper. Because right now you read one or two newspapers, whatever your preferences are at home, and then after that, all through the day, you are scrolling down some news item or the other, some story, some article, some interesting snippet, whether it is on WhatsApp, whether it is through WhatsApp, whether it is through Facebook, whether it is through Twitter. End of the day, you are consuming news. So news is not dying. The uh, the medium in which it is being published, the way in which it is being consumed, that is getting changed. So you may be consuming news through Facebook now, through Twitter now, through WhatsApp now, or through some other medium, as a newsletter probably. Earlier you were consuming news only through newspapers. So it is the medium through, it's the same, probably it's the same article, same Tribune article, which would be coming through to you through your Facebook wall.
Thank you. So I had a small frivolous question. Will Tribune also have a TV channel?
Now, first of all, we have skipped that generation already. Now everything is online. So we have our videos online. If you can subscribe to our videos online on YouTube. Our videos are available on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Our videos are available on Facebook, on Twitter, and also on our website.
Yes,
Thank you,
please.
sir.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for giving new insights on this massacre. I am Vipin Pal Singh with the Department of English. You have given a new insight in the context of V.N. Datta's research, that how he pointed out it was Hansraj who lured certain people. But by and large, what I do feel that certainly there was some kind of complicity or some kind of role of the elite category within Punjab. My question is that, do you feel that there was some kind of complicity or some kind of passiveness or some kind of lack of rigor on the part of local elite, especially the Nawabs or those people who were given certain titles like Sir or Maharajas of Punjab? What was their role? Was there any kind of resistance on their part? Or did the Tribune ever give any space to that kind of resistance on the part of elite of Punjab?
See, after 1857, all those Rajas who survived, whatever they would want to call themselves, whether Rajas, Maharajas, whatever, all those who survived were stooges of the British. Because the British had ensured from the Mughal emperor, the last emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar onwards, to the smallest Raja, smallest chieftain, either transported for life and made to die in utter poverty and destitution in places like Burma in the case of Bahadur Shah Zafar, or in various places for others, smaller chieftains. Most of them were killed. Most of them were mercilessly killed. People were blown off on cannon mouths. It was so. After that, whoever remained were only stooges. So what do you expect from the stooges? Do you expect any Stooge to stand up? So there was nobody to stand up. And interestingly, in fact, your question is very interesting because in the run up to the massacre, in the days preceding the massacre, these Rajas and Rai Sahibs, they had put out appeals asking people not to agitate, because when Gandhi was arrested, Gandhi on his way to Punjab was arrested and sent back to Bombay presidency. Punjab erupted, and there was violence. There were violent protests all across. So all these Rajas and Rai Sahibs, all that they did was to appeal to tell people not to protest. So, but that is hardly surprising because there were only stooges left.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Any other question, please?
So you have one question in the chat box
Yeah,
by a
please.
student.
Yeah, can you please read it out to me? Because
Yeah, it's somebody who's Anusha Hegde. She's asking, we have annual literary festivals and other programs that discuss issues pertaining to society, history, and culture in a critical manner for a few days every year, which are conducted by prominent media houses in our country. Can we expect the same on a more regular basis from print media? Because it keeps our minds active. That's what she's saying. So any comment or addressing of this?
To the students, my first comment or rather request would be, first of all, they should read the newspaper every day. The present generation, wherever I go, whichever campus I go, to my utter dismay, I find that very, very few students to read newspapers on a daily basis. So unless you engage with the newspaper, whatever be it, with the newspaper of your choice, it is very 3 days a year or 4 days a year are not going to make a difference. What is going to make a difference is when you engage with the newspaper every day on a daily basis.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for your thought-provoking, comprehensive and enlightening lecture. And you have highlighted the role of media, how they have journalists, editors played very important role, and how they taken the soul of the intellectual people, ultimately announcing the livelihood, God, etc., etc. So with these words, I would request our registrar, sir, KPS Mundra ji, please propose vote of thanks.
Registrar, sir. Mic on, please. Sir. Sir.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. Respected Shri Rajesh Ramachandran ji, Editor-in-Chief, The Tribune, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central University of Punjab, Professor R.P. Tiwari ji, Professor V.K. Garg, Dean Student Welfare, faculty, staff, student, and all the participants. It's my privilege to express the vote of thanks to Shri Ramachandran ji, Editor-in-Chief, The Tribune, for enlightening us on Jallianwala Bagh, Martyrdom to Freedom, under the special lecture series of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, organized by the Central University of Punjab on the occasion of 75-year celebration of India's independence. As an editor-in-chief, you are holding a great responsibility of maintaining the trust of masses in the democratic setup by giving them a platform to speak. As far as my knowledge is concerned, sir, the meaning of the Tribune is an ancient Rome official to provide protection to ordinary people. And by doing free and fearless journalism, to Tribune is doing a commendable job. During the freedom struggle of India, the Tribune remained a vehicle of free expression of nation's voice and prepared Indian masses for participation in the freedom struggle against colonial masters without any fear.
The founder of the Tribune, Sardar Dayal Singh Majeethia, wanted to play a role in the freedom struggle, which was still in its nascent years. He was very particularly concerned about the British newspapers, the civil and military gazettes, which was brainwashing the people of that time with official propaganda. By keeping that in view, he started the Tribune from Lahore. I acknowledge the role of Tribune's founders and its all former editors in getting rid of the British rule through fearless writing and revolutionary methods, and the way Tribune supported the freedom fighters. As in 1919, the fearless Tribune described Rowlatt Act as a blunder of colossal magnitude. From Kalinath Ray, Prem Bhatia, Raj Chenanga to Harish Khare, all fearless editors, and now you, I wish that legacy of the Tribune to serve the country, its people, and nation would continue with leap and bounds, sir. Mr. Ramachandraji, today I want to share my profound memories with the Tribune to you about its legacy. I am also belong to Chandigarh. My late father always used to start his day by reading with the Tribune and ended up his day with the Tribune. Before partition, my father was working in Punjab University, Lahore, and as told by him, he used to read the newspaper when the Tribune was published from the Lahore. And we used to ask him, what is special in this paper? And that you read it every day. He replied, once you start reading it, you would know what is special in it and would become an integral part of your life. And that's was correct. And the love, affection, and legacy for the Tribune in our family is continued for our fourth generation. Sir, I express my great indebtedness and sincere thanks to Mr. Rajesh Ramachandran-ji, Editor-in-Chief, for sparing his valuable time and speaking on the topic. I guess we could not have better speaker than him for speaking on Jallianwala Bagh, martyrdom to freedom. Thank you very much, sir. I would like to express my profound gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor R.P. Tiwari-ji, for his continuous guidance, direction, and presidential address, and inviting such a person of excellence and giving all us opportunity to hear his talk. Thank you, sir. I also congratulate Dr. Baba Singh for organizing this wonderful webinar. I also thank to all the faculty members, non-teaching staff members, officers, and students participating in this webinar. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I would request all please rise up for national anthem.
पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधिकरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाए कब जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे